Papaya contains special lubricants.
Okay.
McLaren has been dominating this year and is certainly on their way to another Constructors' Championship. As one of the longest-living F1 teams, they have 12 Drivers' Championships and 9 Constructors' Championships. That's tied with Williams and only behind Ferrari in Constructors' Championships. But they've only won 1 Constructors' Cup and 1 Drivers' Cup since the year 2000.
What should we do to prepare for Y2K?
What should we do to prepare for Y2K?
So what's been holding them back?
I don't know.
An engineer.
McLaren is one of the most prestigious names in motorsport, the only team to have completed the Triple Crown. Yes, Ford and Mercedes did complete the Triple Crown, but only as manufacturers. This is a team event, and I think at this point McLaren has had more famous people inside of them than Black China. From Senna to Lauda to Hamilton, McLaren has had a roster equivalent to the 1992 Olympic Dream Team, but from some major ups have come some low downs, and just a few years ago, McLaren was in the midst of internal struggle. The Marlboro Camel sent an angel of death to our favorite runners-up. Don't worry, McLaren fans, because our Papaya Messiah, Zach Brown, is here to save us. Since its inception, McLaren has existed to be cock-blocked by the wealthier teams. McLaren's skill and knowledge of racing was never in question. He was more than just a pilot, modifying his own Austin All-Star into racing specs at 14 and eventually joining F2 in 1957 and winning the New Zealand Championship Series the next year. He was picked up by Cooper and became F1's youngest driver to win a Grand Prix at 22, a record which stood for 44 years until Fernando Alonso's debut. He founded McLaren Automotive in 1963 alongside his childhood friend Timmy Mayer and continued racing with the Cooper F1 team. But they were trailing behind Ferrari, Lotus, and BRM. And in 1964, Bruce wanted to race in the Tasman Series. You know, like a palate cleanser. When big boss Charles Cooper said no, he decided it was time to test his own team. But Mayer, during practice for the final race at the Longford Circuit in Tasmania, crashed and died. McLaren wrote in Mayer's Eulogy, "The news that he had died instantly was a terrible shock to all of us, but who is to say that he had not seen more, done more, and learned more in his few years than many people do in a lifetime? To do something well is so worthwhile that to die trying to do it better cannot be foolhardy. It would be a waste of life to do nothing with one's ability, for I feel that life is measured in achievement, not in years alone." It was a tragedy that struck the team hard and motivated them into their next chapter. Tim's older brother, Teddy, became a major investor in McLaren, while Bruce continued to work toward the three's racing dreams. In 1966, he raced in the historic Ford GT40 1-2-3 finish at the 24-Hour of Le Mans. He had finally founded Bruce McLaren Motor Racing and began driving the only car on the team. The engine was more unreliable than Texas's power grid, and their best showing was only 4th in Monaco. In 1968, Denny Hulme joined from the Can-Am side of McLaren, and with the legendary DFV engines, they started tallying the points. Enough to earn McLaren second in the Constructors' Championship. They were still having much better success in the Can-Ams, truly crushing the competition with an increasing gap between 1968 and 1970. Bruce McLaren had been testing his new McLaren M8D for the next Can-Am season when the rear bodywork came adrift at speed. The loss of aerodynamic force destabilized the car on the Levant Straight just before Woodcote Corner at Goodwood Circuit. The car spun, left the track, and hit a bunker used as a flag station. Bruce died aged 32 in England on the 2nd of June 1970. Teddy Meyer took effective control of McLaren after losing a brother by blood and a brother by oil to the sport they all loved. Bruce's death seemed to put a shadow upon McLaren, leading to a few winless seasons. The drought was ended by Danny Hulme at the 1972 South African Grand Prix. This greased the wheels, and they brought in enough points between Peter Revson and Danny's 10 other podiums to put McLaren in 3rd for the Constructors' Championship that year. McLaren would get 3rd the following 1973 season as well. Come 1974, previously mentioned Champagne Peter Revson would unfortunately lose his life during practice for the South African Grand Prix. With yet another death looming over the team, Emerson Fittipaldi battled hard against Lauda in the Ferrari to take the 1974 Drivers' and Constructors' World Championship. When Fittipaldi left to join his brother's team in 1975, Meyer was forced to hire a wildcard, James Hunt. Here we watch the epic and harrowing fight between Hunt and Lauda return that damn silver medal to McLaren again. Apparently you need a blood sacrifice to turn Papaya from silver to gold. Despite being consistently in the top three, McLaren was always more focused on racing than making a profit, and the vultures were circling. Making a deal with Ron Dennis and his backers of lung cancer fame Marlboro to keep the lights on when the lights go out, Dennis had been running a successful F2 team and dreamt of the big leagues, so he brought with him John Bernard, whose tism for planes and cars gave him the idea for the revolutionary swap from aluminum to carbon fiber chassis. Dennis merged them with his project for racing, and by 1982, the original shareholders and mayor had officially been bought out and departed McLaren. But the dream behind the name was still alive. Dennis saw the whooping they were receiving from Renault and Ferrari's new 1.5-liter turbocharged engines and knew he needed big help to compete. He somehow convinced Porsche and TAG to come together to create his vision and invest into McLaren. With Mayer gone, Dennis brought Alain Prost on board since Mayer had wanted a different driver and Prost had just been scapegoated by Renault and their failure last season. If you got tired of Max's Red Bull dominance, you would have hated the 1984 season. Alain Prost lost by half a point to the teammate he himself recommended, Niki Lauda, and they together scored more than 2.5 times more points than the Ferraris did. Senna and Prost started the golden papaya years, winning 6 of 8 Constructors' Championships between 1984 and 1991. After dropping to second for the 1992 and 1993 seasons, McLaren faltered to 4th for the next 4 years.
Lamborghini, Ferrari and Porsche. They all make prestige sports cars that cost a fortune. And now they have a rival.
With this, the McLaren F1, a road car like no other.
While the racing team struggled, Ron Dennis worked to move the McLaren name onto the public roads.
McLaren F1.
The McLaren F1.
McLaren F1.
The McLaren car's executives and designers entered into a formal meeting to discuss what they would put out for their street car. And then 10 hours later birthed the concept of the McLaren F1. They wanted the lightest sports car with the fastest release and no turbo. BMW took the reins on this V12 Tasmanian Devil and made it the first road car to use gold and an all-carbon fiber chassis. And it was the fastest road car in the world at 240 miles per hour. And then he decided to enter the supercar in races. The engineers said, yep, strap a spoiler and some racing tires on that bitch and let's race. The F1 GTR most notably brought home the 24-hour of Le Mans in 1995. That win, plus Johnny Rutherford's Indy 500 win in 1974 and Prost's F1 Monaco win in 1984, had earned McLaren the Triple Crown of Motorsport.
We did it. We did it!
Back on the F1 grid, the team had been slowly working on improving. They had Mika Hakkinen in his 5th year and David Coulthard in his 3rd with the team, and the results were starting to show. 1997 brought 3 wins, with 2 by David Coulthard at the 1997 Australian and Italian Grand Prix, and a win by Mika Hakkinen in the 1997 European Grand Prix. The inconsistency of the car had killed the interest of Marlboro, and because it was the 90s, the team just found another cancer stick company to partner with. The team colors now had to change again for their sponsorship with West, but now they had Adrian Newey on the team, and he pulled everything he could think of out of the 1998 regulation changes to get McLaren and Hakkinen the championship. In 1999, they battled Ferrari and got second again, god damn it. After the 1998 win, they established themselves as a top 3 team, only finishing under 3rd twice between 1998 and 2012. One of those was a 5th place finish in 2004. The other was, well, being disqualified for one of the most blatant examples of cheating ever recorded. If you already know about SpyGate, feel free to skip to this timestamp. McLaren hired a Ferrari engineer, Nigel Stepney, and had him steal a bunch of documents, gave them to McLaren's chief designer, who had his wife take the documents to a shop to get them put on CDs, because back in the day, you couldn't do that yourself. I mean, some people still can do it themselves, but those people are stupid. Where was I? Oh yeah, she gave her real name to the dude working there. Left, and he immediately Googled her and found her husband. He decided McLaren probably shouldn't have a giant list of documents titled Ferrari Only and Confidential, and found the email address of the company's Formula One sporting director, Stefano Domenicali. People had no cybersecurity back in the day, what can you say? Ferrari complained to the FIA because, fuck you, that's cheating. McLaren said that while the documents may exist, it wasn't shared or used to influence their car in any way, and invited the FIA to investigate. Because if you go through all the trouble to steal this stuff and don't admit to it until it gets reported, I'm sure you wouldn't actually use it. That's just ridiculous, good sir.
Oh, no, I ain't seen nothing. I ain't seen nothing. Matter of fact, I'm blind in my left eye and 43% blind in my right eye.
The FIA initially said that there was no evidence McLaren had actually used the information and that there would be no penalty.
How? What the f*** does that mean?
As you can imagine, Ferrari was pissed and started the appeals process with the FIA International Court of Appeal. This started up a media storm lasting from July up until September, when the FIA hearing imposed a penalty for illicitly collecting and holding information from Ferrari to confer a dishonest and fraudulent sporting advantage upon McLaren. The penalty included a record fine of 100 million euros. As an American, someone comment down below the conversion, like $600 and a cheeseburger or a goat burger for Europe, I don't know.
It is 3 in the morning. I am in a nest of Jews.
After forking up that much cheese, they were feeling a little ratty. All right, I'll stop. They also lost all points awarded to McLaren in the entire 2007 Constructors' Championship and were obligated to submit its 2008 chassis for inspection for any funny business prior to the season's start. Yeah, I'd hope so. The drivers Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton's points were not affected, since they were narcs.
Narc!
Maybe it's the American in me, but never snitch, man. Fuck their plea deals.
Ooh, he's snitching. Everybody, he's Hey, dude, get back.
The two were free to contest the Drivers' Championship. However, no McLaren representative other than a driver was allowed onto the podium. Not that it mattered, since Kimi Räikkönen had already won the World Driver Championship by Brazil in October. On December 13th, in the letter, Whitmarsh stated that the team accepted that a number of McLaren employees had access to Ferrari technical information and apologized that it took the intervention of the FIA for this to come to light. After keeping quiet the rest of 2008 and watching Hamilton become the youngest driver champion, 2009 saw Dennis hand over the running of the F1 team to Martin Whitmarsh, while he himself took on the role of Group CEO. When Hamilton's contract was finally done, he bounced to Mercedes ahead of the 2013 season to start his own dynasty. McLaren got 5th. Again, can't be much worse, right? Well, since this was before the cost cap and was the largest sports fine ever, they really weren't looking so good and dropped to 9th place for the 2015 season. The only season they've ever finished under that was 1967, the second year they existed. Ex-CEO Ron Dennis tried coming back after a 5-year sabbatical where his attempt to wrestle back control of the company culminated in a lost court case against his fellow shareholders and suspension from his position as chairman. Points weren't being scored. Sponsors were fleeing, and by 2016, the McLaren board decided they had enough. They couldn't fire him, as that would be costly, so they just waited for his contract to end. The whole time, Alonso was drowning with the Honda Driftwood he'd been assigned to, calling it a GP2 engine on the radio while on the Suzuka circuit. While in the midst of all this trouble, the shareholders still had to find their next captain. They finally found it in the co-owner of United Autosports, Zak Brown. Zak Brown is the luckiest car guy alive. He found his interest in karting after winning Wheel of Fortune at 13.
Wheel of Fortune. And now, here's your host, Pat Sajak. Zach claims to be 13 years old. Is that true?
That's me.
Okay.
And buying a go-kart. Me too, man. That's what I do. Zach loves the sport so much that after his racing career, he founded United Autosports to stay in the world of racing. He founded the company with former driver Richard Dean, and they grew it to be one of the largest motorsport teams in the United Kingdom. In 2020, United Autosports became the first ever team to win the 24-hour of Le Mans and 2 other endurance sports car championships in the same year. Zach Brown's impressive work here caught the attention of McLaren shareholders. In November 2016, Brown was announced as Executive Director of McLaren Technology Group, while the company was waiting out Ron Dennis's contract. In April 2018, Brown became the Chief Executive Officer of McLaren Racing as part of operational restructure of the McLaren Group now that the bad man finally went away. Zach had made it to the top and had a plan to get the F1 team back to its historic prestige without cheating. He followed Bruce's formula of success, starting with personalities and engines, the powers that push a team out of damn near any issue and into fighting shape. He broke up with Honda and their engine and went back to where they'd seen success before, a Mercedes engine. The next faces of the team needed to be not only great drivers, but great marketing personalities. And for that, he found Lando Norris. Now, with rabid fans behind them again and the cost cap, there was a chance. Oscar made his infamous signing against Alpine's wishes, and they began the climb back to the top. Mirroring the days of Prost sticking through the tough times, we have watched Lando provide an invaluable mentor role on the team and getting them the data the team needed to improve. While Oscar literally looks like a young Niki Lauda, please, no one pinch me if I am dreaming. The Papaya Boys, backed by a Mercedes engine and an engineering team that doesn't quit.
Day is never finished. Master got me working. Someday Master set me free.
Has finally found the perfect combination of engine, wings, drivers, and downforce body changes to take the fight to Max the Wunderkind Verstappen. Teammates are once again duking it out for the Drivers' Championship for better or worse, and Team Principal Stella is happy to only be stepping in if they crash and earn 0 points. He's the team principal by name only because after Dennis's 2014 return, he had abolished the position of team principal at McLaren, saying it was an outdated position, and Zach Brown can't just come out and say his predecessor was a moron. Since Zach Brown took over, in part of his efficiency efforts, he cut Andreas to just Andrea. McLaren had better take advantage of everything Zach has put together and win the 2025 Constructors' Championship before these regulations change again.